Thank you, Professor. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference and also the organizers of this Professors Network for including me into the research group and inviting me to this conference. So my presentation would be, I would call it, let's say, guidelines or some remarks about the research that I've carried out within this network in the past 5 months. And to begin with our constitution, I have to say that we have a common tradition with Czech Republic. However, we decided to choose a different approach. Unlike the Czech Republic, we included the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. We incorporated it into the Slovak Constitution. So all the basic fundamental rights and freedoms you can find directly in the Constitution, and we use the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms only as a tool of interpretation. Our Constitution mentions the environment and natural resources in several articles. For example, there is Article 4 about exclusive state property of certain resources, and it also mentions the constitutional prohibition to export waters outside the state territory. Then there is the limitation to property rights in Article 20, Section 3, the right to cultural heritage, and then also there is the essence of the environmental protection, that is the right to favorable environment together with right to information. All these rights, they do create the constitutional framework for the environmental protection and for the protection of future generations. However, the Constitution does not mention or define the environment or does not define the principle of sustainable development or mention the future generations. To understand these terms and these concepts, we have to go to the statutory legislation and use the Act on Environment, which has been adopted during the common Czechoslovak era. This Act established all the principles of environmental protection, and it transposed the principles of an international environmental law that have been adopted in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. But besides this act, there are also specific separate laws protecting the individual components of environment, like waters, forests, or landscape. It is also very important because it established the basic principles and rules on liability for environmental matters in civil law and liability for the breach of environmental legislation. So the definition of environment can be found in this act, and it does not include only humans, but it includes also all living organism and also the inorganic part of nature. So therefore it is considered in Slovakia that it is more ecocentric. As for the actors of the constitutional protection and constitutional law related to future generation and environments, first of all, of course, the Parliament can be mentioned, but its main role is to shape the environmental legislation. And then within the Parliament there is a special committee that is providing certain tasks and certain roles in the field of parliamentary control of public administration. More interesting is the judicial sphere that is represented mainly by the Constitutional Court of the Slovak Republic. And next year it would be like 30 years that the Constitutional Court is separately existing. However, in these almost 30 years there have been like only 87 decisions directly connected with the right to a favorable environment. So it is noticeable that our Constitutional Court, when deciding on this right, it is rather cautious and reserved. There have been several issues They have been connected mainly with the legal standing of the public concerned and the NGOs in the Slovak Republic. And the court held it for a long time a strong position that the right to a favorable environment can be used only by natural persons. So it was almost legally impossible for the public concern represented by NGOs to file a constitutional complaint. Our court accepts also individual constitutional complaints in case of protecting the fundamental rights. So, the legislation changed. In the year 2015, we adopted a new administrative judicial code, and this administrative judicial code anchored special rights to public concerned when acting in favor of the environment. So this legislation opened the gateway to link the right to a fair trial or right to judicial protection with the right to a favorable environment. These changes in the legislation are mostly connected with the case law of the Court of Justice of the European Union. There have been two crucial cases connected with the Slovak Republic. First one is the Brown Bear decision, and the second one is the Pazanok landfill. In the second one, our current president was also active, and both of these cases related to the Aarhus Convention and the interpretation of these rights. Like you heard today, I think it was in Croatia that their Aarhus Convention has a direct effect. In Slovakia it's different. You have to adopt a national tool to put it in practice. However, as a member of the Union, the court said that we are already using some Union legislative tools, therefore we have to grant these rights according to the Aarhus Convention. And these changes in the legislation then lately showed also in the case law of, in the cases of the Constitutional Court of the Slovak Republic. It can be seen in the recent cases that the public has been successful with its constitutional complaints. What was interesting as well, the court decided, the Constitutional Court also, in the area of waste legislation. In this area, he pointed to the existence of public interest in waste management, and it said that there is general need for some global concept of environmental ethics. The court was speaking about environmental ethics. Well, from my point of view, it's not the issue about environmental ethics, but maybe it's also issue of the concept of environmental justice. And if the court says that we have a moral obligation to take active care of the protection and conservation of nature, that we have to go forward towards the ecocentric approach to nature, that maybe the court was, at least from my point of view, speaking also about the protection of future generation. But the main idea was environmental ethics and transforming the moral obligation from waste management to the Constitution, to the Article 44 of the Constitution, that is the right to a favorable environment. Public Defender of Rights is another independent authority who can act also in the environmental issues. He can protect fundamental rights and freedoms, and the last two ombudspersons, both of them women, have been very active, especially in the field of water management and also in the field of right to water. There have been some monitoring surveys and reports done by these two ombudspersons. There has been done a survey or monitoring on small water power plants because the Union and the founding scheme of the European Union was financing these intents. However, what it caused in the Slovak surroundings was that these power plants have been financed, but somehow the issues of biodiversity of rivers has not been included into this intent. So the monitoring of Ombudsman caused the cancellation of almost 14 intents of water power plants, small ones. And then there has been the report on the right to water in Slovakia, and the Ombudsman actively identified the localities or the areas in the Slovak territory where this right has not been provided to the population. As for the basis for our fundamental rights in the Constitution, the right to a favorable environment as a constitutional concept is closely connected with protection of life and health, but also with private life, with the private sphere of human, and so it can have also some dimension of personality right. It can pose as a limit to the property, but it can also complement it, and it has a strong link to public participation, right to information, and judicial protection. As for the right to information, that everyone is entitled to gain the information from the public authorities, there is general legislation in the Article 26 of the Constitution, and then there is Article 45, right to environmental information. However, it is interesting that the environment may also pose as a limit to freedom of information. For example, if we speak about protected areas, protected species of wild fauna, wild flora. As for the right to a fair trial, this article doesn't directly speak about the environment, but the legislative changes have caused that nowadays it is possible to link these two rights and to file a constitutional complaint. But before the Court of Justice of the European Union, there has been also the influence of Aarhus Convention Compliance Committee in case of our atomic power plant Mochovce. There have been old files from the 80s of the last century, and the rights of the public have not been respected. In the field of rights to participate in public affairs, there has been a long dispute whether this right to participate in public affairs also includes the right to comment the draft laws, for example, environmental legislation. Since 2015, we have direct legal provisions guaranteeing the public such right. And the second issue was environmental impact assessment. Till 2015, this procedure has not been an administrative proceeding legally connected with right to a favorable environment. This changed in our legislation, and since this year, it is also possible to file a judicial action against EIA decisions. As for high protection of natural resources, I already mentioned the Article 4 and Article 44. The Article 4 is directly connected to exclusive state property. Article 44 prescribes general obligation to protect the resources and components of the environment in the Slovak Republic. Our Constitution, this was also part of the research project, prescribes also the protection of marriage and parenthood. We have constitutional provisions on marriage and parenthood protection. Marriage is a unique bond between man and a woman. Family is the basic unit of the society, and all children are equally protected. However, in our constitutional court case law, there is no or none decision connecting the family and protection of future generations yet. Financial sustainability can be seen in Articles 55 and 55A. Our economy is socially and ecologically orientated, The Slovak Republic shall protect the long-term sustainability of its economy. So there is a possibility to link these articles also to the duties under exclusive state property of resources and general duty not to harm the resources. There has been a special legislation in 2017 that amended the constitution, and it was centered on the protection of agricultural land and forest land. The protection of national assets can be seen in the Special Constitutional Act on Budgetary Liability, and this act is calculating all the factors that should determine the long-term sustainability indicator. Well, what are my de lege ferente proposals? When I was thinking about them, I would say that our concept of constitutional protection of waters, transport prohibition outside the state territory, is too technical. There is too many details in our constitution, and the same legislation can be found in the General Act on Waters. So I would say it is always better when the constitution is more general and more principled. Where I see a problem is right to information about the state of environment. It is guaranteed, however, we still do have a situation that it is not possible to get information about certain environmental burdens. And the third problem I have identified is waste management. Slovak Republic is really disposing waste a lot. There is a low waste to energy approach, and if there is some waste to energy, there is always a conflict between what waste should be recycled and which waste should be energetically used. And I think maybe it would be possible to somehow also reflect these principles in the Constitution of the Slovak Republic. Thank you for your attention.